Hello there. Good evening or good morning, good afternoon. We are online, so you can watch us whenever you want to. But this is Wednesday Night Sessions. We'll be debuting on a Wednesday night, coming soon to you. Today's episode, I am excited to have R.S. Deeren with us. It's one of the better books I've read in recent memory. I absolutely loved his short story collection. I'm getting ahead of myself. R.S. Deeren is joining us today. He is a fiction writer, short story collection, Enough to Lose. It was a 2024 Michigan notable book. And if I were in my home office, RS, I'd hold up my copy for you also. But unfortunately, it's not here right now. Um, yeah, so anyways, this is Wednesday Night Sessions. I always get ahead of myself. I'm your host, Mitch Novus. Thank you for joining us. To our regular viewers, it's been a minute. We took a year off, but we are back in 2025 and have some great shows coming your way. And then for our new viewers, welcome. This is an online show that used to be in person, and we run through Kickstart Farmington, a fantastic local arts organization in Farmington, Michigan. So shout out to Kickstart for all the great work they do. Already said, excited that RS is with us today, so I'm going to toss it over to him. As I already said, he is the author of Enough to Lose, 2024 Michigan notable book, and he is currently an assistant professor of creative writing at Austin Peay State University down in Tennessee. So he's one of my favorite kinds of guests for this show, what we like to call the Michigan expats, because there are some phenomenal writers from our land here who have landed elsewhere. So RS, thank you very much for making time to join us today, and I will toss it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me. It was really lovely to get your invitation for this. The work that's online is brilliant, and the other conversations are just as engaging. So I'm excited to be here, and then also for we're pre-recording this, so I'm saying this to future versions of whoever's watching this. Hi, mom, dad, and family members, and also my sister Janelle. All right. So yeah, I'm originally from the Thumb of Michigan. For those of you who are watching this that are not from the Thumb of Michigan, if you hold up your hand, well, actually, yeah, if you hold up your hand and look at it, I'm from right there, small town called Caro. It's about 2 hours north of Detroit. My family is all from the Downriver area, so some of you may be watching from Allen Park or the surrounding suburbs there. Getting or Enough to Lose comes from being raised in a working class family out in the woods. A lot of the jobs that the characters have in these stories are jobs that I had, or jobs that I tried to get, or jobs that friends or family had. The entire collection they're linked stories, so characters that are in the spotlight in one story are in the background in another. I will Well, I'll read from one story that references others, but obviously you don't need those other stories. This first story takes place in 1986, and then we get to see those characters come back all the way through the 2010s, and that's the last story of the collection. I'm going to read in the middle. It takes place pretty much towards 2013, 2014. And it's a story called Getting Out. It's about a man named Calvin who is recently paroled, and he is trying to make a go of it. So I'll read about 5 pages from that. Getting Out. Stacy was my PO this time around. She had a small office in a county annex building on Saginaw's east side. Unlike my last PO, Stacy was newer to the job, which was great for guys like me. It meant she still believed in the work and hadn't been ground down by, well, guys like me. Stacy, in so many words, gave a shit, and that was a good place to start. She even ended every check-in by telling me to stay successful. I had been out for only 4 months, but was starting to get the feel for how my life was going to play out for the next 32. Keep working, keep sober, keep my head down. I walked into this last meeting, though, and Stacy didn't have that stay successful vibe. She was nose deep in my file. Morning, I said. That coffee sure smells good. She motioned for me to sit down. Have a seat, Calvin, she said. She didn't look up. Are you still at Kroger? Stocking shelves 3 nights a week, I said, going on 3 months. Most of my coworkers were high school kids and were good for ditching shifts. I was able to pick up 3 mornings and filled the week working doubles. A landscape crew was unloading one of those zero-turn mowers outside of Stacy's window. Used to be that the state or county had inmates do it cheap. I'd done it myself and tried to get on with a new operation out in Caro the first time I was out. But that was in the middle of the recession, and there were too many folks looking for work who didn't have criminal backgrounds. I didn't stand a chance. Of course, all my file said was that I was unemployed at the time of my most recent arrest, and now I was barely employed. But still no apartment of your own? Stacy said. She must have really found my file interesting because she hadn't once looked up at me, just kept turning reports over. What's with the rapid fire questions? I asked. Calvin, we're together for 3 years, she said. In a perfect world, you find a permanent place to live and a job that can pay for it. Then you keep that job for the duration of your parole. In the real world, though, you might get fired in, say, a year. You can't pay rent and you have to move. When that happens, I can help you, but only if you have a track record of checking off all these little boxes in your file as early as possible, and you don't have enough credit. 3 nights a week on minimum wage doesn't leave me much, I said. I'd couched surf for the first month I was out, and now I was trying to make it work at a weekly motel off of Michigan Highway 13. Every time I filled out an apartment application, I stopped when it asked, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" How was I supposed to make anything more of what I had? The state gave me what they legally determined was enough freedom, but it wasn't enough to grow any kind of new life. It's hard finding more work when bosses ask if I got a car, I added. You don't have a car? Stacy paged through my file and jotted down a note. Not exactly, I said. My ex-wife has it. It wouldn't matter much if I had it. I'm not allowed to drive it. One of the landscapers, in a bright green shirt and face mask, glided past the window with a weed whacker. That's not true, Stacy said. She flipped all the way back to the beginning of my file, when I was just baby convict Calvin. You lost your license on your first arrest because you refused a BAC test, then didn't show up for your hearing. She flipped back to the current paper version of me. Now you've set up a repayment schedule with Saginaw County. Go to the Secretary of State office and get a probationary license. You can drive if it's for work, parole obligations, or emergencies. And I mean that, Calvin. If you're caught driving for anything else, with your record, the state of Michigan will send you back in. But I gotta get my car from my ex, I said. That's between you and her, Stacy said. She closed my file, and that was that. Outside at the bus stop, I found a bright yellow flyer taped to the glass. Roommate needed, all utilities included. It was one of those handmade flyers with the bottom cut into little tearaway phone numbers. Paying weekly at the motel wasn't exactly cost effective, and with only a hot plate, I wound up ordering takeout a lot. Stacy had mentioned the perfect world and the real world. Maybe being somebody's roomie was a step along that path. Nobody had taken a slip, which meant there was a good chance nobody had called. I took the whole flyer and stuffed it in my back pocket. I had the rest of the morning off and got out to the Secretary of State's. The printer buzzed, and the woman behind the counter handed me a form. She pointed to the top of the paper, which read, Standard fee, $125. Then to the ATM in the corner. I plugged the amount in, and it spit out a solid chunk of what I'd earned from my extra shifts. That night at work, I called Kate, my ex, from the pay phone bolted to the storefront. She answered my unknown number with Waters Welch residence, both of our last names. She wasn't surprised to hear from me, even asked how I was doing. I told her the good news, but didn't know whether to frame getting my license as a celebration or as a favor to her to get my heap out of her driveway. I can't just give you the car, Cal, she said. But it's mine, I said. I need it. So do I, she said. The clinic doesn't close just because I'm not there to open the doors. When we were together, Kate had been chipping away at a business associate's degree. A year into my sentence, she got a job running the office of a veterinary clinic. Slip the puppies and kitties some kids' Tylenol and they can sleep the day away, I said. Kate scoffed. That was a joke, I added. I heard nothing. I could picture her on the other end, formulating how to balance however she had lived the last 3 years on her own, with me dropping in now after a less than stellar 5-year marriage. I'm sorry, Kate, I said. It's not an apology issue, she said. It's a practical one. Let's talk about this later. I'll call you. I tried to tell her this wasn't a cell phone, but the line had died. I patted my pockets, looking for my cigarettes, but realized I must have left the pack in my coat in the break room. I felt the crumpled flyer and pulled it out, flattening it out on the side of the payphone. I only had 2 shifts scheduled the coming week. If I had to wait on more money coming in, at least I could slow the bleeding. I dialed, and a man on the other end said he'd meet me at the unit the next evening at 7. The complex was a quarter-mile off the 54 bus line and sat along a tree line behind Rite Aid. It was one of those Bavarian-looking places with thick wooden crossbeams over white stucco, inspired by the German immigrants who had flooded mid-Michigan generations ago. It rose 3 stories from the middle of a dirt parking lot. The spring had been nothing but rain, and the lot had flooded until it looked like a wide moat circling a German castle. A man on the 3rd floor sat in a camp chair with his feet up on the balcony railing. "Are you Cal?" he called. I said I was, and he gave me a thumbs up. "I'm Mike. Come on in." I walked in to the cleanest, coldest apartment I'd ever been in. 2 window units on high in April. No clutter, and everything smelled like lemon and vinegar. A couch sat in the middle of the living room, facing a sliding glass balcony door. A small TV stood on an end table in the near corner next to a portable coat rack filled with button-ups and slacks. A sliver of counter space divided the living room from an efficiency kitchen. It was all pretty plain, pretty unassuming, but lined along the back wall were hundreds of boxes of world's finest chocolate bars. You know, those cheap ones you get at the bank for $1 with a Pizza Hut coupon on the wrapper. There must have been close to 2,000 chocolate bars stacked in there. "Nickel tour," Mike said. He had come in from the balcony and was flipping a bottle cap between his knuckles like a magician. He was a small guy, taller than some and shorter than most, kind of soft in the middle with wispy light blonde hair that sat on his forehead. He was unassuming, like the apartment, except for the perfect seams in his clothes. It was like he was dressed in origami. "Bedrooms through the door on the left," he said. "Bathrooms to the right. You can have the bedroom. I've been sleeping on this couch here so long that I think my body would shut down if I used a bed anymore. There's some linens in the closet. Rent's due on the last day of the month." I pointed to the wall of boxes. "Product," he said. He mimed straightening a necktie. "I'm a salesman. When you're all settled in, come out to my office. I've got an opportunity I know you'll be interested in." He flipped the bottle cap like a coin and caught it as he turned back to the balcony. When I went outside, Mike handed me a folding camp chair. "Have a seat," he said. The balcony fit the 2 of us snugly. A Burger King bag and 2 empty Bud Light bombers were below his chair, and he had a 3rd bottle set on a clipboard across his lap. My tongue tensed as it remembered the chill of a night's first beer. Then I thought of Stacy's warning, the piss test I'd woken up early that day to drop, and then jail. Mike handed me a burger. "I know who I was asking to room with when I posted those flyers," he said. "A salesman doesn't just know the product, he knows the buyer. Did you find the flyer I posted outside the probation office or the piss test lab?" "Probation and parole," I said. I bit into the burger, pulled the tomato out, and set it on the wrapper. "Need to save money, eh?" he asked. "You want to make more?" "What's the catch?" I asked. "Just do as I say and I'll pay you $100 a week or take it off rent. Your choice." He tapped the clipboard resting on his lap. "I clear $400 every week." "Pay me $150 and we have a deal," I said. He twisted the cap off of his 3rd beer and balanced it on his thumb like a coin. "Watch this," he said. He flipped the cap and caught it midair by its edge. With a jerk of his wrist, he snapped his finger and the cap spun out towards the tree line. It spiraled through the leaves like a flying saucer and disappeared into the dark. He chuckled to himself and drank. "My dad taught me that," he said. Here it is, Calvin. I know what I'm seeing because I've seen it all before and been there myself. I was in, now I'm out, going on 7 years with what the state calls free. I got tired of part-timing it and tired of managers with their finger over the employment at will button. I know you need this, and I know that I didn't have help when I was where you are now. I wasn't on Mike's lease, so I could bail if he really was a nut. If he wasn't, though, maybe I could bank enough to not need my car. Sold for 100 a week, I said. Great, Mike said. We start tomorrow at 9. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
Man, I love the cliffhanger, leaving us in the middle like that. Um, to the audience, I cannot recommend it enough. RS, I absolutely loved your book, and I love that you chose that story. Like, 'cause I feel like that one captures so much of the kind of the ethos. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm having a hard time grabbing the right words, but like that character's situation captures so much of the tone of many characters in the book. Not that they're all, have records, but just the notion of kind of lower class, struggling, striving, like any job you can get to get by. And I guess I'll kind of transition off that into my first question for you, because I feel like we're both Michiganders by upbringing, and we're both also interested in the literary world, which functions so much on the coasts, right? Like it's kind of a tired trope at this point, but I loved your book for a wide range of reasons. One, your writing is just tight and fantastic, and just the quality of the sentences, like I dug it. But I also can't ignore the fact that I think I also loved it because I saw myself in it, which is also kind of it seems like a tired trope at this point. Like that trope's not the right word. Again, didn't get enough sleep, but those of us who live in flyover country don't always get to see ourselves in the literature. I feel like so many of those kind of classic New York writers are famous because the whole industry is based in New York. So everybody's like, yeah, I see myself in it. And so it's just a treat to be from here and see a book that features rural Michigan. So I'm going to try to spin this into a question then. As you're writing, how much do you feel like, are you purposefully trying to capture where you're from versus just like it's in you and you're going to write and that's what's going to come out? Like, are you trying to be, in a sense, an ambassador for rural Michigan? Or does it just happen?
Well, that's a good question. So I had always kind of jotted down stories or poems or whatnot back in the MySpace age, and I'm not telling on myself too much. My students know this already. I used to post really sappy poems up on MySpace, and I'd have like Microsoft Paint drawings that went along with them. And I always thought, oh, this is a fun hobby. But growing up in a working class family, the idea was like, what are you going to do to pay for your life? And I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher. So I went to school with that in mind. My sister and I are first generation college students as well. So we navigated those waters with parents who were quite supportive. We're very lucky that my mom and dad are quite supportive of us, but they didn't have the university experience. So when we would come home from it being extremely difficult and we didn't really know why it was difficult, they would say, well, you just got to work hard, because they have that workman's mentality of put your head down and work, kind of like what Cal has here. So going away to college, that's when the writing started to take off, and I was weaned on pretty much like the canon, the literary canon. So a lot of dead white dudes, which some of them I still very love. I have a deep love for William Faulkner, which is strange because I haven't read him in over a decade. It's probably time to go back to him. But I always thought like writing was this, yeah, especially poetry was like this rich person thing. Like, and in many ways, I'm not that far off. I just got back from the Association of Writers and Writing Programs Fest or conference, which is a very expensive conference to go to, and was also on the coast in LA. So there's a lot of money floating around there, and a lot of folks who are brilliant writers, but also come from a different economic background than me. It wasn't until I was pretty well along in my undergrad that I read the works of Bonnie Jo Campbell, and she's working in this world, Southwest Michigan, which for me, having come from the Sunrise side, is so far away from the world I grew up in. Cairo is an hour away from any interstate if you drive the speed limit, which most folks don't. I've said this before, and people are like, I can get to the freeway in 35 minutes. And I was like, I bet you can. But like, so I've got family ties in downriver, so like I can write a little bit about Detroit, but it's not home. It's not a unique place that I know inside and out. Um, Matt Bell is also another lovely Michigan writer who has written about the Detroit area. There's a new book out by John Counts, and it's called Bear County, Michigan, and that's up here and into the UP. Like those are different worlds from me, and they're all very Michigan, but they're not my Michigan. And I have never read literary work from the thumb. And I was just so fascinated by this space. So my last year in my undergrad, I wrote a hunting story, and I had thought people didn't want to read hunting stories, and people didn't want to read about poor folk from the woods. And I wrote the story, and my professor at the time, he's still there. He's at Saginaw Valley. Go Cards. It's Vince Samarco. Hi, Vince. Hopefully you're watching this. He said, I think you really found your voice. And I have never forgotten that. And that was about 15 years ago now. So I went to Chicago, and that's where I got my MFA, and I was writing these stories. I was writing rural working people that are trying to get by, that are failing to get by, or being failed by a system that won't let them get by.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and really having grown distance, it's been 10 years since I lived in Michigan, and it's been 11 years since I lived in Michigan. And the distance has allowed me to really find a balance between romantic love for like a romanticization of the thumb and just a more level-headed love and respect for the space. So that's why I write about Michigan. Having gone to grad school, I got my PhD up in University of Wisconsin Milwaukee. I had a lot of fantastic colleagues, a lot of fantastic classmates. Some of them have become very great friends of mine. And then again, on the other side of that, the universe is always in balance. I had colleagues and classmates that did not understand where I came from. And some of them didn't want to understand where I came from. They're the ones who use the term flyover as a derogative, an ignored space. AWP last year was in Kansas City, and there was some panels there about the Midwest and about Michigan, and hey, welcome to the Midwest, or welcome to the kind of South, welcome to not the coast. There was a lot of vibes there, and I made the joke, yeah, we have a vibrant literary world here and running water. So I kind of always make that jab. But I guess a
It's a
roundabout
good,
way to
good
answer
thing.
your question is I still have plenty of Michigan stories. The novel that I've been working on with my agent stemmed off of this short story that I read. Cal is the protagonist of that novel. Him and Kate are trying to make things work. They have a son in that novel. He's still formerly incarcerated. She's very successful, and their son is stuck in between.
Oh man, I I need to read this novel. This is
I need to
like a
finish. I
sequel
need to
for people.
finish these next rounds of edits, and then we'll see what happens.
No, I know that feeling. I've got one I'm throwing out to agents desperately, so I know how
Yeah,
that goes.
yeah.
That sounds fantastic, though. Like, so I mean, are we breaking the news here on Wednesday night sessions? Like, everybody, go get Enough to Lose before the novel because you got like
Yeah,
a
I would
prequel
I
here.
would say go. I mean, I'm pretty open about my writing process. I have another novel that I'm working on too, and it's about this young woman which is funny because I said young now and she's 27. I was like, no, I guess that is younger than me. There's this woman who is trying to infiltrate a small town enviro Christo cult, which is just like a church run by this nut job. she's trying to infiltrate that cult so she can get her brother out, because that's her mother's final wish. So I'm working on that, and it's got a lot of small town dynasty heels that
Yeah.
though they're so fun to write.
I mean that's if you're from a small town that you can just say that phrase and everybody from a small town immediately knows the kind of person you're talking
You,
about.
yes, that's exactly right. Like you can picture that person. They own that thing over there, and their sister owns that thing over there, and their mother and great uncle sold that tract of land to Walmart or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, half the town has their last name because yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot
they
of
own
streets
everything.
named after them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I guess is probably for folks from big cities. I shouldn't make it sound like RS's work is only for us rural folk. Like this is the same thing as the mayor. It's the same things
Yeah.
happen in big cities, right? Where the connected
Yeah.
people end up being the heels. Also, it's
Oh yeah.
I suppose an archetype of
I think one of the joys of writing small town fiction is that I mean, conflict. The students that I'm lucky enough to have in my class, I teach them that, you strip anything down to the bare bones of it. Conflict, what we care about is characters in conflict. And whether that's in a city of 3 million like Chicago or 12 million like Los Angeles, or 4,000 like Cairo, Michigan, like human nature is human nature. I think with small towns, you can feel that conflict press a lot more. When I lived in Chicago, I was asked in an interview years ago, what's it like to have moved from a small town to the big city? And I hadn't been asked that before. And I was like, well, the city is so big. My life is pretty invisible. My life is pretty small. So which makes living in this city pretty easy. But in a town of 4,000 people or a town of 2,000 people or smaller, you're not invisible. The Cal's of the world, like everybody knows Cal's history, and nobody's going to give him the time of day. And that's not his fault. He's supposed to be going through the process of redemption as dictated by the state. But he's smart enough to know that the state does not give him enough. Yeah.
oh man, I love that. It's a fantastic way of explaining the small town big city dichotomy. Like, yeah, you can't hide in a small town. I love that. Yeah, let's spin that into the second official question. I have probably 36 different questions I could ask right now, but I do want to I want to stick with the thumb idea here for a minute because like the thumb it for folks that don't know it, the whole thumb region again, just in case you're not familiar, even in Michigan is rural and unpopulated. Like even by Michigan standards, the thumb is rural and unpopulated. And it's really fascinating because if you haven't been here, um, the connection like it's very close to Metro Detroit, by far the most populous area of the state. So it's got this very interesting identity of like being hyper rural, but 2 hours from a Tigers game, as opposed to the Upper Peninsula, which is almost like another country as far as like vibes go, so
Yeah,
to
they're
speak.
Packer fans up there.
Yes, yeah. Like you're not even wearing Honolulu blue up there. It's like a totally different thing. So, like, I love the UP and I love my friends
Yeah.
from the UP, but even they'll be the first to say, like, yeah, we're kind of a different thing. Much thanks to Ohio and Toledo for the Toledo War and us getting the
Yes.
UP. Best loss of all time. Anyway, back to the thumb. If you don't have any idea what I just said,
There's
Google
good
it.
hot dogs in
The
Toledo
Toledo
though.
War, a war with no shots fired, won and lost in a barroom argument, I believe, as legend has it. And we were gonna fight Michigan and Toledo, Michigan and Ohio. We're gonna go to war. We said Ohio can have the Toledo Strip, and we get the UP. The federal government was somehow involved in that decision. Whatever, we lost and won by a mile. So anyway, there's
I
that.
think
So
somebody
back to
needed a
the
vote
thumb.
in Congress or something like that. And yeah, I think a president, was it Jackson at the time, was like, I need support, so I'm going to support Michigan with this or something. I don't remember. I learned that
Essentially,
when
like the Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I learned that in like fourth grade Michigan history class, and that was a couple years ago.
Yeah, it's been a minute. That's you'll hear me being very fuzzy on the details.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great story as I recall it. I know I've
Yeah.
misrecalled it, but regardless, look into it. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm getting off track of my own question here.
Good
So
conversation
again,
then.
the thumb is kind of unknown even in Michigan. So RS, you're from Caro, which is kind of an entry point to the thumb. I think of it. We get up there a couple of times a year. My in-laws have property outside Caseville, so I love the thumb. I've grown to love the thumb,
Yeah.
but I didn't get there until I was an adult. So what be an ambassador, I guess, for the thumb. I'm going to call that back a minute. So if you are an ambassador for the thumb, what would you tell people they should see if they visited? I should have warned you. The second question has nothing to do with writing. So you're telling
Oh,
people you're coming to Michigan, you're going to the thumb. What do you highly recommend? Doesn't have to be like a one best thing. Like what one, two, three things. Like what do you got to see in the thumb in Michigan?
oh goodness. Well, you've got to first, you got to read the thumb. And I'm writing fiction, and hopefully some of you have been kind enough to get a copy of Enough to Lose or ordered it from your local library. But so Cal Freeman is a poet. He's actually a downriver poet. He's from Dearborn and the Allen Park area. And I was lucky enough to publish alongside of him years ago in Great Lakes Review, and I read this gorgeous poem where he's writing about the Pinnebog River going out there through Port Crescent day use. And so there's an answer. You got to go to Port Crescent State Park. You got to get onto the Pinnebog River. It's like a coffee colored river. It's real slow. Got to get good kayaking out there. But he wrote this gorgeous poem. And it was the first time I'd ever read anything literary about the thumb of Michigan. So I cold called him, and now we're literary buddies. And I see him every time I come back to Michigan for some writing. Um, so you got to read Cal Freeman. And then there's also this other poet. Her name is Emily Kinney, and she's from outside of Port Huron, which is arguably the thumb. Not as thumb as like Caseville or Harbor Beach. Yeah, it's right there in the blue water area. Goes across the border to Sarnia, Ontario. But yeah, Emily Kinney is another great poet. And she's getting her PhD at Southern Miss. So when her book comes out, that's definitely another literary thumb touch point for folks to read. But places to see, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a poet right now and I'm going from reading to smells. I really love the smell of the sugar beet factories. And I know that they're awful. And I know that residents of Bay City, Michigan have sued Pioneer Sugar. And they really should win those. Like Pioneer needs to do a better job of taking care of their sludge. But the smell of the sugar beet factories is like sugar and burnt dirt. Like it just smells like home. And you really only get that in a few places in Michigan, and that's Croswell, Lexington area, Sebewaing, Unionville area, Caro, and Bay City. So I really like those. Um, I really loved Grindstone City. Grindstone City has their general store, which recently burned down, and I haven't seen news of them rebuilding, but I do think they would be rebuilding. Grindstone City is just really unique because it was like at one point the country's largest supplier of millstones, and you see them all over this small town. And then when you go to the general store and order a small ice cream, it's like this big and it's all
Yeah.
homemade. So Grindstone City is also great. I really love that you brought up Caseville. Caseville, I think Caseville's a town of what, like Caseville's like right here on the inside on the Saginaw
Exactly.
Bay coast. And they're like 100 or like 1,500 people or maybe around 2,000 people. But every summer they have Cheeseburger in Caseville, which is a Jimmy Buffett themed festival. And hundreds of thousands of people just flock to tiny Caseville for cheeseburgers, Jimmy Buffett themed things, and music. So that's always fun. It's a lot, and it's usually like 10 days. Um, Other than Michigan's thumb has in that area the largest tract of state-owned game land. So if you're into morel hunting during the season, or pheasant or white-tailed deer hunting, or you just like hiking out in untouched land or mostly untouched, I talk about the fires and I talk about poor logging and other stuff that I've written. But if you just like nature, the thumb of Michigan has so much to offer. And I really do love that. For those of you coming from downriver, you can just get onto 53 and keep going until you can't go anymore. And then also Bad Axe. Everybody loves Bad Axe. Turnip Rock, if you're a kayaker, Turnip Rock's right off the tip of the thumb, and it's a nice, gorgeous coastline. So really, I mean, I could keep going on. You've said you got 36 questions. I got 36 answers for all the things you should see. But if you go to the thumb, stop in at any bowling alley and get yourself an order of dough balls. That's pretty much what you got to eat when you go to the thumb, which are fried dollops of pizza dough. And they're usually served with nacho cheese and marinara sauce. And then you take the nacho cheese and you dip it, and then you flip it and you dip it in the marinara sauce. It's heaven.
I love that is I kind of we need to start a new podcast and get you on that, like the thumb, like tourism in the
Oh, yeah.
thumb.
I mean, the thumb is so weird because like I in that book I talk about mid-Michigan and I chose to I don't read Getting Out that often and really it only ends in the thumb. It takes most it takes place in on Saginaw's east side. And Saginaw is for sure mid-Michigan, Tri-City area, Saginaw, Midland-based city. It's there. It was a logging hub for years as part of Automation Alley for all those years. I mean, the foundry. I drove by the foundry a few months ago. It's the GM foundry still there. That's mid-Michigan. And you had said that the thumb is kind of like, I mean, I know they hate it. I didn't like feeling that way. Like if there was flyover in Michigan on a microcosm, it would be the thumb, but you don't even fly over it. You just take 75 north past it and you look to
Yeah,
your right and you're like, I don't know what's out there. And
yeah.
I love that about the thumb. I really do. I love being from there. And the people who stay, they love it too. I mean, they love their little neck of the woods, for better or for worse. I've talked a lot about some of the downsides of the thumb. And just like anywhere else, there's good and there's bad. But I say mid-Michigan, and I've been thinking lately, I don't really even know if the thumb counts as mid-Michigan because like I don't know, the bay is there that kind of half cuts it off from the rest, and there's no
Yeah.
interstate that goes up there. And it is like the thumb is vastly different from Saginaw, and Caro and Marlette and Imlay City are so different from Port Huron and even Lapeer. Like Lapeer and Lapeer County, some folks call Lapeer part of the thumb as well, but there's so much different. So I'm not really sure if it is mid-Michigan, and I don't have an answer. So maybe somebody in the comments can be like, it is or it isn't, and we'll see a tally going.
Watch this be like the most viewed episode of this series ever because it pops off in the thumb and debates. This might be the weirdest connection, but as you were talking, because I'm from mid Michigan originally, and like I said, I never even got to the thumb until I was an adult. And the two are really similar in a lot of ways. It almost strikes me like Charles Darwin's studying the finches. Like this is a finch, but it's different. Like it's because it is geographically cut off. It's like you have to purposefully go to the thumb. Like I love how you said it, like a microcosm of flyover. Like you don't accidentally end up in the thumb. You have to on purpose take a left at M24 and head north, you know?
Mhm.
So I feel like they're very like I'm from north of Lansing and it's all farm country. So there's more in common
Yeah.
between like Clinton County and the thumb than there is difference, but the differences are huge. Like to the point, I love that you brought up the sugar beets. Like even just driving through the farm country itself looks a lot different. You know,
Yeah.
my kids are like, I've never seen this before. What's this plant? I'm like, that's not corn, bud. You know, so it's just a really unique place. And it is. I love that you also highlighted its pros and cons. I love that your stories highlight the pros and cons. That
Thank you.
like, you get that kind of great hardworking mentality of so many of the people that choose to stay there, but then you also get this kind of isolated, defensive, kind of violent in some extreme cases mentality as well.
Yeah.
So, like anything in human life, it's the good and the bad, right?
Yeah, there's so I feel like I'm always talking about how important place is, and these spaces are so unique. And the students that I've had in class, I always tell them the delight is in the detail, and those details are good and are bad. And yeah, I'm not really huge in like prescribing to write what you know, because we are all humans and we all know what it's like to be human. The first story I ever tried to really take serious was before I thought I could write about the thumb, and I wrote about this Detroit expat who wanted to sell trees in a town, and I was like, I'm just gonna have him move somewhere west because how literary of me, light out to the territories. And he moved to a town called Plentywood, Montana, which is a real town in Montana that I just found on the map, and I like the name of it. And
Yeah.
I have never been there, and this was before Google Maps and before smartphones, so I didn't know what it looked like. So I just named the town and then didn't really explain anything. And like in places that we live in the spaces that we occupy, if we pay attention to those details enough and we look at, the dust that's gathered in the corners, we can write with so much authority, and I think that that's really important. Like I said, the Thumb of Michigan, I absolutely love the Thumb. I go there, I go hunting there every year still. My family, my mom and dad are still on the Cass River, which they've sent me photos of. It's really high right now. A lot of rain going on up there. But of course, like I don't romanticize the place as much as I used to. There are still things that have issue with it. So some folks, like a lot of my characters, they'll have some kind of an issue with addiction or some legal issues that they're dealing with. Some folks would call them losers, bottom of the barrel folk or whatnot. And I find that that's selling thumb buddies short. I mean, we can see addicts and losers in Chicago or Detroit or New York or t Nashville and whatnot. I think maybe they're just felt a little bit more in a sparsely populated place. But also, for as much as they fail, these characters fail, a lot of them find things and succeed. And it might not be the McMansion, it might not be the six-figure job, but it's something that they wanted and it's something that their lives needed. And I think that there's beauty in something as I hesitate to use the word simple, but there's something beautiful in that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, and the issues of the thumb are largely issues of poverty. So you are going to get the same problems
Yeah.
in Chicago that you get in the thumb. It's poverty is poverty, you know?
Yeah, and eggs are $7.25 a dozen here right now, and I have no idea. I should text my mom and see what they are up there in the thumb, but it's not getting better.
Yeah.
And in this story, I talk about the recession, the Great Recession, the housing collapse, and at the end of the Audis, that
Oh,
shaped who I am. I grew up working class and then graduated into a wrecked economy, that was wrecked on purpose for people who are vastly richer than anybody in the history of the world. And they did it on purpose and they got away with it. And we're kind of seeing it again now. It formed who I am. And I mean, now that I have a living wage and I am a professor of English, there is that economic distance that I have, but class is culture, and I feel like if I'm always going to write about it, it's not going to help me to try and forget or ignore people who fail or succeed in a way that might look different than what my version of success looks like.
oh man, I love that. RS, I feel like we could keep going for
Yeah,
hours. We have enough background stuff in common that we could just keep talking about these things, but we probably should wrap this up.
yeah,
Um, Man, thank you again. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your book. I love your book. Again, folks, if you aren't familiar with it, Enough to Lose. I've given it, I think, as a gift 2 or 3 times already since I read it a year or so ago. So check that out. RS, thanks. And I'm looking forward to those novels, man.
Yeah, yeah, I just we're a month away from summer and a month away from me just diving into them. But hey, I really appreciate the kind words that you had to say. And you're right, we're two Michiganders. We could talk our tongues off for sure.
Yeah. We could keep going for days if we had to, right? Or if we had
Definitely.
time. We could go to the Coalwood Bar and hammer this out. For
Yes, yes, we could. I went up there and dropped off a copy of the book, and the owner said, "Why would you write about this place?" And I said, "Read the book. You'll see why."
Yeah, buddy, why not? I love it. All right, that's not the Coalwood Bar is a perfect note to end on. RS, thanks again. Viewers, thanks again. If this is your first time, we've got lots of other episodes on the Kickstart Farmington YouTube page. Check them out, and we'll be back with episodes again soon on a Wednesday night near you. Take care.